time with us, and in return, we're going to continue to give you business tips and marketing tips for your business. So today, I wanted to start out with a wellness check. How's everybody doing today? You don't have to answer, if you're at work or anything. The people that can't answer, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good.
On the top of the world, blessed.
That's right. All right. That's good, because we have to remember, as an entrepreneur, we have to keep a positive perspective. I know that everybody may not be a full-time entrepreneur, but if you're a half-time entrepreneur, it's the same thing. It's the same struggle every day. We got to stay consistent, stay positive about your vision, protect your vision, use discernment on who you share your vision with, because everybody is not on your team. With that being said, let's talk about Tradelines. Let's talk about Tradelines, because a lot of the time, as an entrepreneur, especially as a Black entrepreneur, we find ourselves running into one problem. Can somebody tell me what that one problem is?
Capital.
Exactly. Financing, capital, access to financing. I previously worked for the California Black Chamber of Commerce, and that was one of the main things that we were focused on as an organization. How can we create access to capital for minorities or for underserved, disadvantaged business owners? So, with that idea in mind, I started to create, based off of me talking to different experts in their fields, I started to create a program that were basically steps on being your own financing. The first thing you start off with is your personal credit. So in a nutshell, you use your personal credit to leverage or as a surety for your business credit. Then you use your business credit to finance whatever business venture that you're going into. What I usually suggest is that you create more than one business, so that once you get your personal credit financed, then you don't just have to fund what we call it one business at a time. And so, for example, what would happen is what I've done with my own personal credit, cleaned my credit up, got it over 750. Then I created a few businesses, and then I went and got business trade lines for those businesses. And now my businesses have an 80 paydex, which is the same as having a 750 credit score for a business. So a paydex score is a credit score for your business. Then I went out, for example, for my t-shirt business, I went out and used the business credit that I was able to obtain using my personal credit and bought t-shirt inventory. I bought a screen printing machine. I bought key presses, lights, all the stuff that I needed to push my brand. Of course, I have a business plan to make the money back to pay for the trade lines, because that's the number one. Not the trade lines, but to pay the credit back, because that's the number one thing we run into. That's another thing that we run into, is not having a plan to pay the money back. So you want to make sure that you have a solid plan on how you're going to get your money back. So without further ado, let's talk about what a credit to debt ratio is. Does anybody know what your credit to debt ratio is, or what that means?
Yes, sir. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, for the people that don't know what a credit to debt ratio is, your credit to debt ratio is also known as your credit utilization rate, or debt to credit rate. And it generally represents the amount of revolving credit you're using divided by the total amount of credit available to you, or your credit limits. So your credit utilization rate is sometimes called your credit utilization ratio. In other words, it's how much you currently owe divided by your credit limit. It's generally expressed as a percent. So for an example, if you have a total of $10,000 in credit available on 2 credit cards and a balance of $5,000 on one, right? Your total credit utilization rate is 50%. You're using half of the total credit that you have available. You can calculate it. You can calculate an overall utilization rate as well as a rate for each of your credit card. That's called your per card ratio. So your credit utilization rate is very important. So in that example, if two cards for $5,000 and you have a balance of $5,000 on one, that's 50%. That is a 50% utilization rate. You want to keep your utilization rate of all of your cards or your debt total. You want to keep it under 30%. That's where you're operating at kind of a good capacity for your debt utilization. Now, an excellent utilization rate is under 3%. So in that example, if you had two cards, both totaling $10,000, 3%, you would be only using about $300 of the $10,000 that you had available to you. Now, you probably asking yourself, what can I can't really do anything with $300, you know? And I will open your eyes to something as we move on. So just keep that in your head. A perfect utilization rate, an excellent utilization rate, is anything 3 to 5%. Anything under 30%, but 3 to 5% is an excellent utilization rate. So keep that in your mind. What are trade lines used for? So the information included in your trade lines primarily used to create or calculate your credit score. Because a credit score is just a snapshot of your credit worthiness, however, lenders may also check the trade lines on your credit report to get more information. So lenders are looking, especially now, when Trump was in office. I know a lot of people don't like Trump, but when Trump was in office, he made it easier. The guidelines, especially for business credit, they were very loose. That's why a lot of people were able to even do what they did with the PPP scams and all that. There were very loose guidelines when it came to, getting credit, especially if you're a business. All you had to do was have your articles of incorporation, a good credit score, and basically you were in the door with a good business plan, and you were in the door. Now they're looking more not at your credit score, but like I'm explaining to you. Excuse me. Your payment history. So that's something that lenders are going to be looking at. You have to remember that. So where was I at? If you're behind on payments with a certain account, for instance, a lender might check the trade line to find out how long the account has been delinquent. Or if your credit scores have dipped because you have a high utilization rate on a credit card, a creditor can determine whether you're really a credit risk by checking the balance versus the credit limit. So if your limit is $300, for instance, maxing out the card might not be as much of a red flag as if you had a $10,000 limit and you maxed out the card. So how does a trade line work? Your credit score is a 3-digit number. It measures your credit worthiness. It's calculated using a trade line information from your credit report. If you made your payments on time and kept your balances low, or otherwise have been responsible with your credit obligations, your trade line will contain positive information, and you'll have a high credit score to show for your efforts. Without a trade line, you can't have a credit score. For the credit scoring calculation to work, your credit report must have at least a trade line that's been open and active in the past 6 months. So I'm giving you all this information to let you know how important trade lines are to your credit. How trade lines affect your credit. The number of trade lines you have to open at a time. The number of trade lines you have open at a time can affect your credit score. Having too many can make you look overextended, and having too few shows that you have a lack of experience with credit. So now, let me explain that last paragraph more in detail. Having too many trade lines that have a high utilization rate can affect your credit negatively. Now, if you have a bunch of positive trade lines, obviously that shows that you are on track with your credit, and that you're a responsible consumer when it comes to, your credit. And obviously creditors will extend you more and more money because the object of a credit card company is to overextend you. So if they see that you keep paying back your debts, they're going to continue to raise your credit limit until they give you a credit limit they feel like you can basically hang yourself with. So remember, that's the game that you're playing with the credit card companies, and it's not necessarily a bad game if you understand the rules. If you don't understand the rules, then you're probably most likely a plate of food for the credit card companies. They're going to eat you up, chew you up, and spit you out. They're going to have you talking about you don't use credit cards, and you don't only use cash, all this crazy nonsense that, basically throwing away your privilege that we have in America, because this is one of the best countries because of this credit system. This is one of the best countries to live in. Throwing away your privilege, saying that you don't use credit cards, and I don't trust people with, I don't like to owe people and all that. I understand that, but usually that's a symptom of not understanding what's going on. And I actually took the time. I took years. I took about, when I was 18 years old, I'm 30 now. I was about 18 years old. I took about 10 years to really sit down and read front to back, cover to cover, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, which is the doctrine that the debt collectors have to follow, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, all those things. That's what the doctrine that the credit bureaus have to follow. I've talked to people that worked at Experian. I've talked to people that worked at debt collection companies. I've bought debt. So I understand how all those things are working in unison. And really, as the consumer, you have the most power. So what I've done today, in my bio, I have a link. We sell seasoned trade lines. And with those seasoned trade lines, what you can do, say that, for example, and this is a big one. I've had a student loan, and I've helped other people with student loans. I actually just helped this lady. She had over $60,000 in student loans. We helped her. She went through the program, the personal credit program. She's looking to buy some acres. She went through our personal credit program. Her credit score is now 700. But one thing that we done, she had a student loan. Or she had multiple student loans that totaled of over $60,000. Now, one thing, the options that I gave her, I said, okay, you can either pay this student loan and try to pay the $60,000 down until you pay the whole thing off. Or what you can do, I believe Biden, for the next 2 years, he decided that student loans were going to go into forbearance. Did anybody hear about that? The student loan law that Biden put in place, put in effect?
Yes.
So what you can do, put your student loan in forbearance, right? And instead of paying 60 or in a deferment status. And so when you put it in a deferment status, it's basically, you don't have to pay or for a certain amount of time, and it reports as paid as agreed or paid on time on your credit. So now, instead of having to worry about paying $60,000, you have that account of an installment. First of all, it's an installment account of $60,000, a positive trade from the college or whatever financial institution gave the loan. That's a positive trade from them. So now you have $60,000 of positive credit once you make that deal with the student government. I call it the government, the people that gave you the student loan. Now, what you can do to start working on the back end to work off that debt is buy trade lines. We have trade lines available right now that if you buy them, from anywhere from, so say for $60,000, you would have to pay that student loan off. $60,000 of trade lines, you can get over $1 million of paid accounts on your credit. So now, let's not say $1 million. Let's keep it simple. Let's take a look at the website right now. Actually, if you guys go to my bio, if you click the bit.ly link, you'll be able to take a look at the trade lines that we have available in real time, and this list changes every day because people are buying trades every day, and they're not always available. So now, look, say that you have altogether on your credit report $5,000 of negative debt, right? We have a trade line right now for $11,000, a paid $11,000 trade line. It was open in 2019, June of 2019, right? So that means, that was 2 years ago? So that's 2 years of positive credit on your credit report for $11,000. That's your limit. And the price is $321.75. So now, essentially, what you just did, if you had $5,000 of negative debt and you buy that trade line, then now you have $6,000 of positive debt. You still have the $5,000 of debt, but you have more positive debt than you do negative debt. And the result of that is that your credit score will go up and your credit utilization will go all the way down. Does anyone have any questions so far?
Okay, what you're saying makes sense. Now that you explained that very last point, I was like, where is this going? But now it makes sense. And I'm wondering, one thought that popped into my mind is, how is this legal? Like, how do you get access to these trade lines to be able to sell to us? Like, is it your? And then, like, how does it get transferred onto our credit? And is the trade, I got a little confused on, like, is the trade line connected to our personal or is it connected to our business credit? I'm sorry, that was a lot of questions.
Okay, so what's your first? I'll answer them all. What's your first one?
Okay,
how is it legal?
Is this legal? Like, how in the heck did you get all these different trade lines?
Yes, so it is legal. It's 100% legal. And it's the same thing as, so these trade lines I have a network of people that have been, that have had credit since the early 90s. And they have had these credit cards in good standing. And basically the only thing that we're doing is allowing people to become authorized users on our credit cards. So now it's just like if your mother wanted to build your credit, she would put you as an authorized user on her card. Now, the only different thing about this is that you don't actually get a card from us. But you get the results of, like, if you were to have a card. So it's basically an authorized user thing. And it's, to answer your other question, it's attached to your personal credit. Now, I help people do this for their personal credit, right?